today. So we are going to start by observing a variety of resumes. And if you guys like, you can just grab a pen or paper or open a digital note taker, because what we're going to do to start the presentation is that we're going to look at some sample resumes, and I want you guys to, be able to jot down the things you like about them, the things you don't like about them. The great thing about this presentation is that you have the ability to be interactive, and I think that most people really enjoy it because of that. So like I said, we'll start off by reviewing lots of examples that will give you practice in terms of identifying great things about a resume, not so great things. And then we will move on to focus on 4 strategies that you can use, that everyone can use to make their resumes better. And at the end of the session, you will have a really great checklist that you can use going forward to apply to resume writing, resume instructing, and maybe even to improve your own resumes. And then, of course, at the end, we always wrap up with some resources that everyone can access in their own time as you continue to train, as well as work on your own personal situations. Okay, so for the best viewing experience and to conserve bandwidth, I'll just turn my camera off while I'm presenting, but whenever we interact or during Q&A, I will turn my camera back on. Okay, so let's kick things off with a question. And you guys feel free to put your guesses in the chat, and Yanni, you can tell me what's going on. How much time on average do you guys think an employer spends looking at a resume? So people usually give answers anywhere in the range between a minute to 20 minutes to 30 minutes. I'd love to see what's going on in the chat, Yanni. What
10 seconds, 1 second, 60 seconds. Oh, the 2-3 minutes, 6 seconds, 30 seconds. Yeah, people are just dropping this
all
in
over
chat.
the place, right? Yeah.
Seconds.
Well,
minutes.
The correct answer is
5
that
minutes.
Most recruiters and employers only spend about 6 to 10 seconds looking at a resume that very first time. And a lot of people do not like that answer, because what does that mean for you? It means that you have literally 6 seconds to make a great first impression. And that is really not a lot of time when you think about it. Okay. So let's move on to demonstrate this and complete our first mini challenge together. Imagine for a moment that you're a hiring manager looking for someone to fill a position. Now, you know what you're looking for, but you're extremely busy, and we can all relate to this. There are a million things on your to-do list. So you're going to try to get through a large stack of, say, 100 resumes before lunch in only 30 minutes. So first, we'll look at the sample job description. Then I'm going to show you 6 examples of resumes, and I'll give you between 6 to 10 seconds. And for each one, I want you to write down one word that describes the resume, and then quickly decide with a yes or no if you're going to move it into that second pile where you're going to spend additional time. So we're going to do this for each resume until we get through the 6 resumes. And then afterwards, we'll go through and review the pros and cons of each resume example that I show you. Okay, so this is the job description. And I'm going to read it, and you guys can take a snapshot or whatever will be useful as you do the exercise. So it's for a sales representative. And the job description is, we seek a high performer to join our sales team. The successful candidate will be a responsible, motivated sales associate with proven experience. This person will manage the entire sales cycle, identifying sales needs, locating and expanding new markets, designing and delivering sales presentations, and presiding over negotiations. You will build and maintain expertise about a range of company products and services. To meet or exceed personal and departmental sales goals, you'll need excellent customer service skills, an entrepreneurial worldview, business acumen, and a professional sales philosophy. So this is what you are looking for. Ready? Hope you have your writing instruments. Let's go. This is the first resume. Remember, you're writing down first impressions in terms of what you think of the resume, and then a yes or a no to determine whether you're moving on to the next pile. All right, I think that was about 10 seconds. So let's review the great things about this resume. Clear headings make it easy for employers to identify the different sections of your resume and narrow in on important areas for them. It allows them to skim your resume quickly. White space and wide margins are important to give the resume's reader's eyes a break. Oftentimes, and I can remember doing this, we reduce margin size and add more text when we're trying to fit all information on one page. Now, this can make things difficult for the potential employer to read, which could distract them from the actual content of the resume. So one good thing about this resume is that it has a good amount of white space, which improves its readability. And these are the call outs for all the things that are good about the formatting of this resume. Okay, opportunities for improvement. You probably noticed that Asha doesn't have a lot of experience in sales. She created a skills section at the top of the resume, which can be helpful for employers to get a quick overview of her skills, but most of these skills aren't relevant at all to the sales position that she has applied for. Be sure to build out an overview at the top of the resume that tailors your experience to the position you're seeking. The experience section should include more details around how you acquired skills in your previous positions, but you have to be sure to highlight the skills that are most relevant to the job that you are applying for. And so, all of these resumes need to be customized based on the job that the applicant is hoping to get. So these are the call outs for where Asha could have improved this resume. Second resume. Okay, so sometimes your work experience isn't the only area of your resume where you can showcase the value of your accomplishments. Be creative. Think about things like certifications, training sessions like these, awards, volunteer work, part-time jobs, and continuing education classes that make you more qualified for the position you're seeking, and include those as well. Opportunities for improvement. You probably noted that Adam's resume does not include any details about the responsibilities or accomplishments at his previous positions. Never assume that the employer reading your resume will know exactly what you did at each job just based on the title. You also don't want to miss an opportunity to highlight any successful projects that you may have completed, as well as expanded responsibilities and measurable accomplishments. And we'll spend a fair amount of time later on in the presentation outlining how you can expand and showcase your measurable accomplishments. Next resume. Okay, so there are a few different font types in this resume that we will talk about in a minute, but the headers used for each section are in simple, readable language. And you should make a note that when putting together a document like a resume, that all of the fonts and colors selected should be easy to read. Okay. Opportunities for improvement. This one has a lot, right? Now, you may have found that some of the color choices in this resume are distracting. Depending on your industry, it may be acceptable for you to use an accent color. However, too many different colors could be distracting to an employer. Also, some of the font types in this resume are very difficult to read. It is always better to stick to one easily readable font type throughout the resume. Depending on your geographic location, a photo included on the resume may or may not be a standard practice. In some parts of South America, Asia, Africa, and Europe, it is actually a requirement that candidates include a picture on their resume. Now, even if Titus was applying to a job in one of those regions, he should include something more professional. You want to use a picture where your face is easily seen, the photograph is in color, and of course, you're wearing professional clothing. You may have also found some typos on this resume. And I know the screenshot, you guys probably may not see some of the things I'm calling out, but everybody should be receiving a copy of the presentation. And when you do, you'll be able to see things clearly. So there are typos on this resume. So everyone should make sure that they're taking the time to review their resume for grammatical errors or typos, because this demonstrates to potential employer that you are detailed oriented. Next resume. As an overall word of caution here, we should always select a font type that is simple and easy to read. Now, while Jason may have selected a legible font type, the issue here is that there is an overall lack of white space, which makes this resume difficult to read. There is no break for the eyes of the employer reading it, which can become overwhelming and distracting. Now, we're all multi-talented with different experiences and interests. So it's important to only include details that are relevant to the position that you're applying for. Oftentimes, it's not necessary to include additional links to social media profiles or websites. And of course, the exception may be if you're applying for a position in social media management, or you're a web developer and you want to showcase your expertise by linking to a portfolio or something like that. The most noticeable challenge with this resume is how difficult it is to read. Too much information or crowded text can discourage an employer from reading your resume before they even review your experience. Next resume. Okay. Leanna's detailed summary at the top of her resume makes it easier to quickly review the most important details of her experience. Now, when you only have 6 to 10 seconds with an employer, a detailed summary can present the best information in the quickest and easiest way possible. You may notice that the details around each of Leanna's positions follow a specific pattern. These bullet points start with a specific action verb and are followed by a measurable detail. Like I said, we will talk more about measurable details later, but this approach allows you to showcase the proof of how you executed on specific skills. Okay, opportunities for improvement. You may have found the most distracting detail of this resume to be the font choice. It is very distracting and difficult to read. Oftentimes, you will hold different positions during your time at one company. Instead of showing these positions as 2 separate jobs, you can combine them into one to more easily showcase your promotion or change in responsibilities. Okay, I do believe this is the final resume. Now, we saw an example of a photo on a resume a few slides back, but that image lacked professionalism. In this case, Abraham has included a clear photo squared up on the camera with a smile on his face. While it may not be appropriate to include a picture on your particular resume, I think we can all agree that this one would be more suited for an application in a region where photos on resumes are standard practice. Abraham's resume is slightly more creative in nature, but that can be expected since he has a background in graphic and web design. However, he might not be such a great fit for a sales representative role, but his resume is clear, it has a clean layout, and plenty of white space. Opportunities for improvement. While Abraham's resume is easy to read, there are some obvious typos and errors that can be distracting. You may notice that not all of the filler text has been removed from the skills section. And this is usually an indication that someone has used a template, which is absolutely fine. It is actually recommended as a best practice if people are worried about formatting. However, you do need to take the time to remove all of that filler text and update your own information. Okay, moving on to the next section of the presentation, which will be focused on the 4 strategies that you can implement to improve your resume. So there's no one right way to write a resume, right? There are many different resume styles and formats that might be appropriate for a specific job you're applying for. Today, these are the main points that we will focus on as a roadmap to strengthening a resume. Starting with choosing a professional format, how to highlight your skills and accomplishments, how to use specific examples and measurable details, and finally, some tips on how to tailor your resume to fit a specific job description. Starting off with choosing a professional format. Depending on the job someone is applying for, they may need to create a more traditional resume, or if it's a creative field, they could use a more creative format resume. So the image on the left shows the format of a traditional resume. It's usually black and white, not too many colors. If there's a color, it's usually just one color that's used to highlight a specific section or something that's really important. And of course, the image on the right shows a more creative format with more colors and images and the photograph. And again, depending on the type of job or the type of industry, you may need to decide which form of resume you should choose. The main thing to remember, whether you're using a more traditional format or creative format, is that your resume should be professional, organized, and easy to read. Here are some key attributes to employ when creating a resume. Be sure to include wide margins and lots of white space. Use simple, readable language. Use clear headings and choose an appropriate font. And the font size that is usually recommended is probably about 12. And I would say in terms of font choice, I would say if you chose Arial and Times New Roman, that you should be in good shape. In terms of formatting, Google Docs offers lots of free professional resume templates to get you started. The layout, fonts, and colors are different for each template, but they all contain the same basic information that you'll need for a resume, such as placeholders for contact information, skills, experience, education, and to showcase the projects you've completed. After you select a template that fits your needs, you can customize the document from there. To access these templates, you will need to sign into your Google account, click New, select Google Docs, and select from a template. And here, once you access the template gallery, you will choose a template that you like. After the workshop for your own information, and also when you're teaching a course like this, be sure to become familiar with all of the different versions of resume templates that come built in at no cost in Google Docs. Okay. So we've addressed what style of resume to use. Let's talk about the next strategy that can be used to make a professional resume. And that would be by highlighting skills and accomplishments. Notice we say highlight, not list. And this is because you do not need to include everything. Remember, your resume is not a comprehensive list of every single job that you've ever had, or even a list of things you've been involved in for the last decade. Your goal here is to showcase the skills and accomplishments you have and to make that employer want to call you in for an interview. Once you get the interview, then of course you can expand on other things. You want to convince them that you're a good fit for the job you're applying for. And again, you're just convincing them in the beginning. They don't need to know every single thing that you've done. What they do need to know, however, are the skills and accomplishments that are most relevant to the job that you're applying for. And of course, they will want to see your most recent work experience. So you should be putting the most recent work experience first. Don't be afraid to eliminate jobs from your resume that are not relevant to the ones that you're applying for. Remember, your work experience does not need to be exhaustive. On the other hand, if you've done other activities like part-time jobs or volunteer work that are closely related to the job that you're applying for, by all means, you should showcase those as well. If you need to account for a gap in your work history, volunteer work is an excellent way of filling in gaps. If you're starting a new career and haven't worked in a particular field before, examine all the job and life experience that you have and make connections wherever you can. All right, so let us move on to our second mini challenge. And in this challenge, we're going to practice deciding which opportunities you might include on your resume and which ones you should eliminate. Imagine you're applying for the sales position that we spoke about earlier, and the jobs listed on the screen, possibly this is a very young person, is all the job experience that you have. So you can't make up or showcase what you don't have, right? Now, take about 60 seconds or so, review the job description, and then try to make a decision as to which of these jobs on the left of the screen you will include in the specific resume to showcase that you have the skills needed to perform this job. So the main point of this exercise is to show you that you can choose to include or exclude just about any job depending on your situation. What you're doing here is actually extracting the specific skills, the transferable skills that you can highlight to make yourself appear qualified for the job. All right, so I'm gonna give you guys like another 10 seconds. And then in the chat, I want you guys to tell Yanni which jobs you guys decided to include, which ones you're gonna include, and which ones you're gonna exclude from your job application. And Yanni, I'm just gonna ask you to tell me like the first 3 or 4.
Sure, and we have a lot of questions in the chat. Maybe I can address one, which is the last from Heather Hack. If you eliminate the previous position because it was not relevant, how do you demonstrate that you do not have a gap in employment?
Okay, yes, that's a good one. So maybe the key here is not to completely eliminate it, but write it in a way which this exercise is helping you to do that showcases that you have transferable skills. Because I think if you guys at first glance, if you look at all of these positions here on the left, none of them, right, at first glance seem as if they would be appropriate, right, to list to apply for this job. And many times, especially young people or people who have gaps in their employment, like this is the situation, like they've never been a sales rep before, but that does not necessarily mean that they're not qualified or they don't have the skills to do the job. And so to help to answer that question, actually, Yanni, can you tell me some guess what people are saying before I move on? With
Absolutely. Exclude babysitting, people jobs, wait staff, cashier, bank teller, but not blogging. Exclude pre-singing and blogging.
Okay. All right. So I'm used to those answers. Most people say that because, you know, at first glance, it seems like you shouldn't. However, again, if this is all the experience this person has, right, they can't lie and make up things they haven't done. So as you can see, all of these jobs could be included on this resume. It's all about how you highlight the transferable skills that you have to showcase that you have the skills needed to perform the job. So let's start off with a wait staff position. For a wait staff position, you have may been tasked with upselling customers you were waiting on. Anything from telling them about the desserts, to suggesting a specific accompaniment to their meal could be viewed as what? An upsell activity. As a cashier, you likely engaged with customers for the majority of your workday, a skill that is very important to a sales rep. You have to meet people, you have to build relationships, right, in order to get them to buy whatever you're selling. Let's say you raised funds as part of your volunteer work. This experience could be viewed as being very similar to that of a sales rep. As a bank teller, you likely had to learn the details of every product or service the bank offered. Now, this was a skill that was specifically included in the sales rep job description. Freelance blogging work could have required you to negotiate your rates for your work with publications or clients. Negotiation skills, we can all agree, are very important in any sales position, right? So the key takeaway here is, don't look on the exterior level of trying to match a specific, job description to job description. You need to dig deeper and actually look for the transferable skills. Okay. So here's another way to use digital tools to help you organize information for your resume. You can use digital documents to keep a running list of all the things you might consider under experience. Those things may include part-time and full-time jobs, side work you may have done around the neighborhood. For young people, this is important, clubs or organizations you participate in, volunteer work, and many other things that you do. The advantage of using a digital document is that you can update it at any time from any device that is connected to the internet. That way, when you sit down to write your resume, you're not having to brainstorm every single time to figure out what transferable skills you have from your life. You can just refer to that digital document, which will be a living, breathing document, and cherry pick the skills that you have that suit that specific job application. Okay, moving on to our third strategy. Maybe you have many things to include in your resume, but you don't know which ones to emphasize. Now, how do you make those connections and show the employer that you are the right candidate for the job, or the case of 6 to 10 seconds when they're trying to decide who moves on to actually being called or to actually getting that 20-minute review? And the way to do this is by using specific examples and measurable details in the descriptions of your work experience to show what you have achieved and accomplished. This is what's called showing impact. It demonstrates specifically what you have done and how it has impacted your coworkers, your team, and your organization. Now, lots of people like to use words like innovative, organized, efficient, leader, and effective communicator. I'm definitely guilty of using a lot of them, if not all of them in the past. But how can you show these qualities instead of just using catchy phrases? One way is to use specific examples from your previous experience. Describe the specific projects you worked on, the improvements you made, any processes you developed, or the goals that you attained, right, or went over, especially if you went over them. Describe the quality of the work you've done in the past and show how it relates to what you can now do to this current employer to move the needle forward at this particular job. The second way is to use measurable details whenever possible to quantify the work that you did. For example, you might say that you increased sales at your current job, but what exactly does that mean? Did you increase sales from 1 widget to 2 widgets? That is not something to brag about at all. However, if you increased sales from 1 widget to 1 million widgets, you have to say that. Quantify it. Show your impact in numbers whenever possible. This is also a great place to add any awards or recognitions you received. These show how other people at your job viewed your accomplishments. So let's put this into practice. In our next mini challenge, I'm going to show you examples of work experience. For each example, list the kinds of measurable details and specific examples that you might include if this was your resume. All right, let's go. All right, so think about how you would make these skills descriptions more specific using, as I described earlier, some specific examples and measurable details. You can try rewriting at least one of these descriptions yourself and share them in the chat. So what we're seeing here is very basic. Managed a team, trained new employees, ran meetings effectively, sold more than sales target. In the chat, it would be great if you guys tried rewriting one of these bullet points using specific examples and measurable details. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to do so. Okay, Yanni, do we have any attempts in the chat?
Absolutely. Manage a team of 10.
Nice.
Manage a team of 11 professional electricians.
Perfect.
Exceeded sales target by a percentage during holiday season.
I love it. You guys got it. Yes, that's exactly what should be done. So here are the recommendations. Instead of just saying manage a team, how about saying manage a team of 8 employees from new hires to 15-year company members? Instead of just saying trained new employees, how about saying trained 15, quantifying new employees in 2 years? Developed an onboarding program and documented procedures for all employees to follow. Instead of just saying you ran meetings effectively, ran weekly team meetings with 20 attendees. Now, I know you guys know how difficult it is to get even 5 people to be able to commit to a date and a time to attend a meeting, but if you could get 20 people on a weekly basis to show up, that's great. Relayed sales targets from directors and assigned tasks to team members. And of course, exceeded individual sales targets by 20%, selling 20 widgets over the company's set goal of 100. Any hiring manager, right, once they see the example on the right, will become more interested. The example on the left, I guarantee you, it's really hard to get the attention of someone by just listing a few bullet points as was done in the original version. Okay, let's look at another example. So we're just saying served meals to shelter residents, organize holiday events. Okay, so the recommendations would be, again, quantifying served meals to over 200 shelter residents every other week for 6 months. Now, especially for volunteer opportunities where you're not being paid, nonprofit organizations that depend on volunteers usually have really high turnover rates because you have to be really dedicated and committed to do a lot of this work. It's really hard work, right? And not be compensated for it. So the fact that this person stuck this out for 6 months shows dedication, okay? Worked with Cove director Janice Murray to coordinate the shelter holiday party, obtained $2,000 from local businesses to fund the party, and prepared over 200 pounds of fresh food donations and decorated the community center for event, right? Just saying you organized holiday events actually does no justice at all to what was actually done for this job. All right, so our last strategy, and then we can have some Q&A time, is going to be to focus on how you can tailor your resume for each job that you're applying for. Now, many businesses are using screening software to narrow the pile of possible candidates before a manager even looks at them. These programs can scan the resumes for keywords that are in the job description. If those words do not appear enough in the resume, the program then determines that the person is not a good candidate for the position. So for human and computer resume readers, you'll be most successful when your resume matches the language of a specific job description. When you create a resume for a particular job, you should incorporate as many of the keywords into your past experience and work history as possible. When you describe your past experience using the same terms the employer used in the job description, you not only get past the screening software or the person, but you also show that you paid close attention to the qualities that they are looking for in a candidate. So let's take a few seconds to reread the job description we used earlier. What I want you to do is jot down a few words from the job description that you would incorporate into your resume if you were applying for this position. So take another look at the sales position. Which words from the position would you then transfer or make sure that you incorporate into your resume? Now, you might include words like responsible, motivated, manage sales cycle, identify sales needs, locate new markets, design and deliver sales presentations. A good clue of how to do this is to pay attention to the action verbs that are included in the job description as well. Right? So if we're looking for action words, the action words include identifying sales needs, delivering sales presentations. So the action words that are in a job description can help you to shape the skills that you need to list for each job that you are applying for. All right, so let's take a look at how you do that. So here we have identified some of the action verbs from the job description that you should then extract and incorporate into your resume. Okay, so let's review our 4 strategies. During the short time we spent today, we covered a lot. We began by looking at sample resumes to see what hiring managers look for. Then we examined 4 strategies for improving an existing resume. We started off with choosing a professional format, and we spoke about how you should try to achieve balance so that your resume doesn't look too crowded. We discussed how using a template is a great way to start. And we also spent some time speaking about how you should highlight your skills and experience, but only include your most relevant and recent experiences as it relates to the job. Next, we moved on to speaking about using specific examples and measurable details to showcase your achievements and skills rather than just creating bulleted lists. And finally, the importance of tailoring your resume to the job you want. And to do so, we took a look at how we could use the words from the job description to impress resume screening programs and employers. You can use these 4 strategies as an implementable checklist for revising an existing resume, as well as creating one from scratch. You'd have to take a few minutes to think about which of these strategies would be the most useful to you. Now, there are many other digital tools that can help you with the job application process as well. We've already mentioned resume templates, but you could also use Google Docs to keep records of past experiences and measurable details. And we spoke about how this could be a living, breathing document that you update from time to time, and you also use as a source when you are tailoring your resume. You can also use Google Sheets to track every step of your application process. And here you would list positions, you would list the customized resumes that you use to apply for the positions, make any relevant notes. And of course, when you get to the interviewing stage, you can also make a note of things you want to focus on during the interview and that sort of thing. You can also create a digital portfolio using Google Slides. Now, all of these projects can be accessed anywhere from Google Drive. And the great thing is that they save automatically, so you never have to worry about losing your work, even if your computer crashes. And as you know, you can also share these documents and collaborate with others from anywhere. At this point, we've given you several strategies and digital tips. So before we move on to Q&A, let's talk about some next steps. It's very important that you leave this workshop with a clear sense of what you should do next. So here are some ways to move forward. Review possible resume templates and choose the one that suits your industry, experience, and style. Examine your current resume and find places to include specific examples and measurable details. Create a running list of experiences that you can use to tailor your resume, and consider taking more workshops on Grow on Air. And you can find the list of these workshops by going to g.co/grow on air. Okay, as a recap, Grow with Google is an initiative that is about 5 years old at this point. And the goal of the program is to bring the best of digital training tools to small businesses, job seekers and students, veterans and military families, educators, developers, and startups. And to find out more about the program, you can go to google.com/grow. Okay, so that is the official end of the presentation.